In a 2012 article, media scholar Mark Steinberg refers to the combination of manga, anime, and video games as Japan's media mix. In my opinion, video games are the most widely spread element of this so-called media mix. For example, Nintendo's Pokemon franchise is far and away the single highest grossing media franchise in the world, with Mario not far behind. But more on Pokemon later. The thing is, what a lot of consumers might not know is that a lot of these Japanese video games borrow heavily from Japanese culture and particularly religion for their inspiration. Today, I'd like to point out 3 particular examples of such inspiration, starting with one of my personal favorite series. There's so much religious symbolism in The Legend of Zelda that I could have easily made this entire video all about it, but for the sake of variety, I'd like to focus on 2 particular elements: the similarities between the Shinto creation myth and the creation myth of Hyrule, the fictional land where the series takes place, and the similarities between the imperial regalia of Japan and the Triforce, one of the most titular concepts in the series. First, the creation myths. According to Donald L. Filippi's translation of the Kojiki, at the time of the beginning of heaven and earth, there came into existence in Takamagahara a deity named Ame no Minakanushi, next Takami Musubi, next Kami Musubi. These 3 deities came into existence as single deities, and their forms were not visible. For some better context, the Kojiki is an early compilation of Japanese myths, legends, and historical accounts that's just about the closest thing to a sacred text for Shinto. So these 3 deities, collectively referred to as the Zoka Sanshin, or 3 creation gods, simply came into existence with no sort of provocation or triggering event. These Zoka Sanshin then go on to create the world, and when they are finished with their duties, they leave the world or hide their forms, depending on the translation. This is the beginning of the Shinto creation myth, and there are numerous parallels to the creation of Hyrule as outlined in the instruction manual included with A Link to the Past. I'll be using a translation of the Japanese manual by Johan and Zether2 of ZeldaLegends.net, since much of the wording was changed in the English version. A very, very long time ago, before people appeared, nothing existed but chaos. In that world, the 3 gods came down, and with their respective power, order, and life was built. At the time the gods left this world after having created everything, a golden holy triangle, Triforce, constituting the symbol of the gods' personal power, was left behind and was to rule the entire world. As we can see, there's a strong parallel between the 2 stories. There are 3 gods that appear from seemingly nowhere and use their powers to create the world. After they had finished with their work, the gods of both stories left the world. This brings us to the Triforce, the golden holy triangle that was left behind when the 3 gods left Hyrule after creating it. The Triforce consists of 3 smaller triangles fit together, and each represents a different virtue in the lore of the series: courage, wisdom, and power. This strongly resembles the imperial regalia of Japan, the Kusanagi no Tsurugi sword, representing courage, the Yata no Kagami mirror, representing wisdom, and the Yasakani no Magatama, representing benevolence. Benevolence is switched for power in regards to the Triforce, because that piece of the Triforce is wielded by the main villain of the series, Ganondorf. Nevertheless, in both instances, these items are seen as sacred and are thought to have come directly from the gods. And this isn't where the symbolism ends for the imperial regalia of Japan. Also in A Link to the Past, you collect the Master Sword, Magic Mirror, and the Moon Pearl. Sound familiar? Again, this is only a sliver of the religious symbolism pervading the Zelda games. Other games in the series even borrow from religions originating from outside of Japan. But for now, let's move on to another series, one that should be familiar to all of you. There are nearly 1,000 Pokemon now, and Nintendo has gotten very creative with some of their designs. But the designs of some of the most popular Pokemon are inspired heavily by Japanese yokai, a sort of supernatural entity in Shinto mythology. I'd like to give 5 of the most prominent examples of Pokemon being inspired by yokai, but there are numerous others as well. First, Ninetales. They're based on a kitsune, a fox-like yokai that has magical powers. About every 100 years, a kitsune is said to grow another tail to a maximum of 9, just like Ninetales. As these tails grow, so do their powers. One of the most common powers associated with kitsune is the ability to create fires, called Kitsune-bi. Ninetales is a fire-type Pokemon, so this fits perfectly. Next, Lotad, Lombre, and Ludicolo, which are all based on the very popular Kappa. The Kappa is a water-dwelling yokai that has a beak and a bowl-shaped indention on the top of its head that holds water when it ventures out onto land. The Kappa must keep water in this indention to stay alive. Just like the Kappa, these 3 Pokemon all feature a beak and a bowl-like apparatus on their head, in this case a lily pad. Furthermore, they're all water-type Pokemon, adding to the similarity. Hypno, Drowsy, Muna, Musharna, and Darkrai all bear similarities to the Baku, a yokai with a very chimera-like appearance, seemingly made up of parts from many different animals such as elephants, rhinos, and tigers. The Baku is known for eating nightmares, summoned when children wake up from a bad dream and chant 3 times, "Baku-san, come eat my dream." Similarly, all of these Pokemon can use the attack Dream Eater, and Drowsy even has an elephant trunk, just like most depictions of the Baku. Shiftry is based on the Tengu, easily identifiable for its extra long nose. Tengu are known to dwell in the mountains, which means Shiftry's grass typing makes perfect sense. If we take a look at Shiftry's feet, we see that they're shaped exactly like Tengu Geta, a type of wooden sandal that Tengu are described to wear. This brings us to my final example, Tsukumogami. Tsukumogami are common household objects that have become yokai. There's a belief that objects that have been owned for 100 years will turn into yokai, and these are Tsukumogami. There are lots of Pokemon inspired by the idea of Tsukumogami, so I'll only introduce a few here. There's Klefki, which is literally just a keyring, Aegislash, which is a sentient sword and shield, and there's the whole Litwick family, including Litwick, Lampin, and Chandelure, which are all sort of self-aware candles, candelabras, and chandeliers, respectively. The final example I want to bring up is from a much lesser-known series, at least stateside. The Mother series has enjoyed a lot of popularity in Japan, but it never really caught on in the West. Only one, and very recently 2 games have been released outside of Japan, so that might have something to do with it. But if you've ever played Super Smash Bros., you probably know some of the characters. There's a character in the second Mother game named Pooh, who comes from an ambiguously eastern country called Dalam. Dalam is based on India, and Pooh is the prince. During Pooh's introduction to the story, he is called upon by one of his retainers, telling him that it's time for him to undertake his final trial. He's told that he must go to the place of emptiness and endure his final test. In Japanese, this place is referred to as Mu no Basho. This word mu is an essential concept in Zen Buddhism, basically meaning not or nothing, so it would be better translated as place of nothingness. The word mu also plays a large part in the Heart Sutra, one of the most important sutras in Zen Buddhism. In particular, there are a few lines where mu plays an important role. Using the translation from the Triratna Buddhist community, so in emptiness, no form, no feeling, thought, or choice, nor is there consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. No color, sound, smell, taste, touch, or what the mind takes hold of, nor even active sensing. These lines become even more crucial for our purposes when we look at Pooh's final trial. During his meditation, he encounters in his mind a sort of spirit who threatens him with taking away various parts of his body. The demon says, "To complete your trial, I am going to break your legs. You will lose the use of them. Do you accept this? So, Prince Pooh, you cannot walk, as your legs are broken. Next, I will tear your arms off. I shall then take your arms and feed them to the crows. The taking of your arms. Do you accept this? Ah, Prince Pooh, without legs and arms you can only lie there. Now I'll cut your ears off. You do not mind my taking your hearing away, do you? Do you accept this? So, Prince Pooh, no legs, arms, and no sound. By words floating through the air, I must ask you, do you care if I take your eyes? Do you want to live in eternal darkness? I shall steal your sight. Do you accept this? So, Prince Pooh, now I can only communicate directly with your mind. Your mind is all you have left. In the end, I will take your mind, though you probably don't want to allow that, do you? So, you can't answer? You can't even move? Are you sad? Are you lonely? If you lose your mind, you will also lose any feelings of sadness. Do you accept this? I will take your mind, Prince Pooh. Know that I will possess it." This section bears a strong similarity to the passage from the Heart Sutra. The spirit is describing to Pooh what will happen to him if he finishes his training, most important being a sort of loss of senses. The Heart Sutra takes a positive angle on it, portraying it as an important step of ridding oneself of suffering. However, the spirit spins it in a negative way, threatening to take Pooh's senses forcibly, even painfully. For this reason, we can also connect the spirit to Mara, particularly Devaputra Mara. Devaputra Mara is a demon of the sensuous realm who tried to tempt the original Buddha with earthly desires as he was nearing enlightenment. Of course, there are a handful of games that borrow very directly from Japanese religion, and that's what they're all about. Those definitely deserve some recognition as well, so here it goes. In the game Okami, you play as a wolf named Amaterasu, named directly after the most important deity in Shinto mythology. The majority of the characters are taken from Shinto mythology and related legends as well, such as Susanoo, Yamato no Orochi, and Benkei. Nioh is an action role-playing game set in Japan in the year 1600. The story follows a samurai during the Sengoku period and involves progressing through levels, battling against various yokai in an attempt to catch an evil sorcerer. Some of the most prominent yokai that you battle against include the Gashadokuro, Yuki Onna, and Jorogumo. The game also interestingly features several historical figures including Oda Nobunaga, Tokugawa Ieyasu, and Toyotomi Hideyoshi. Finally, Smite is an online multiplayer game that allows players to fight in large arenas as figures from all sorts of different mythologies. Japanese mythology is included, and Amaterasu, Hachiman, Danzaburo Danuki, Izanami, Raijin, Kuzenbo, Susanoo, and Tsukuyomi are all playable characters. So, these are all just scratching the surface of how Japanese religion pervades video games and more broadly pop culture. If you play Japanese video games or really interact with any media from Japan, take a minute to look more closely at it and you might be surprised at the connections you can make. Thank you everybody for watching my video, and I hope you all found it interesting.